Okay, we start the parasympathetic component of the autonomic nervous system. As I told you in the previous lecture, that the parasympathetic is the system of emergency fight and flight, while parasympathetic is the system of relaxed position. That is, the functionally parasympathetic, it decreases or normalizes the heart rate, it decreases or normalizes the blood pressure. The face is flushed because there is vasodilatation, and the mouth is moist because there is an increased salivary secretion, and then the pupils are constricted and lens are accommodated. For example, when you are reading a newspaper in a relaxed condition, and then there is no sweating and no pyroerection, and the viscera, that is the heart, the lungs, the intestine, the stomach, it is contracting, normally functioning. That is, the parasympathetic is motor and secretomotor and increases the secretion of the glands, and then the peripheral sphincters, perineal sphincters are being relaxed. This is functionally. Then the sympathetic system, each spinal nerve must have the sympathetic component or sympathetic fibers, and almost all the organs of the body are being supplied or having sympathetic supply, and most of this supply is post-ganglionic. That is, they have related in the ganglion, except that being given to the adrenal and gonads, in which the sympathetic fibers pass unrelated through any ganglion directly reaches to the viscera. The parasympathetic supply is mainly given to the internal viscera, for example, the heart, the lungs, the stomach, the intestine, the urinary bladder, etc. While the peripheral part, for example, the limbs, it may not have, it doesn't have any parasympathetic supply because it doesn't need it. While sympathetic, each part must receive sympathetic supply. Now, anatomically, there is difference between the sympathetic and parasympathetic, that the sympathetic fibers that originate from the spinal cord relay in the ganglion in the sympathetic chain, and then the postganglionic fibers travel a long distance to reach to the target organ. While in parasympathetic, the preganglionic fiber in sympathetic is short, and the postganglionic fiber, these are very long. While in parasympathetic, when the fibers originate from their first neuron, either in the sacral segment of the spinal cord or in the brain tissue, then what they do, they travel a long distance and reaches to the viscera, for example, the intestine. These fibers then relay over here in the ganglion present in the wall of the intestine or in the wall of the concerned viscera, and then the postganglionic fibers are very short, given to the same viscera. This is the structural difference, that in parasympathetic, the preganglionic fibers are very long, and the ganglion are situated mostly in the viscera, except in the wall of the viscera, except in the head and neck, where four ganglion are arranged somewhat specially, not lying in the wall of the viscera. Okay, while in the sympathetic, the ganglion are lying in a sympathetic chain, not in the wall of the viscera. In parasympathetic, the ganglions lies mostly in the walls of the concerned viscera, for example, intestine, while in the head and neck there are four ganglions specially arranged in some another way. And it is because of this reason that in the large intestine, especially in the descending colon, this is transverse colon, this is ascending colon, this is descending colon. Usually in the descending colon or maybe part of the transverse colon, the ganglion is absent. The nerve comes over here, find no ganglion to be related over there. That's why that part of the large intestine, the muscles of that part do not contract, do not function, and that we call it as congenital megacolon or Hirschsprung disease in newborn and in children, in which the child always remains constipated because the intestine muscle do not work. Although muscles are all right, nerve is all right, but there is no ganglion where the parasympathetic nerve can relay. Okay. Now, anatomically, the sympathetic, it is present only in the spinal cord, while the parasympathetic neuron or parasympathetic nuclei or central connector cells of the parasympathetic are present in the brain as well as in the spinal cord. That's why the parasympathetic, we call it as, in the spinal cord, the parasympathetic cells are present in the sacral 2, 3, and 4 segment. In the lateral horn of S2, S3, and S4, and that's why we call it as craniosacral outflow. Craniosacral outflow of the parasympathetic means that the parasympathetic nuclei or neurons or central connector cells are present in the brain and as well as in the spinal cord. Now, in the spinal cord, it's like this. Look, in the cervical region, in the spinal cord, the nerve which comes out, it consists of only sensory and motor fiber. Okay. In the thoracic and the lumbar region, first to second lumbar region, when the nerve comes out, it consists of the sensory, the motor, and the sympathetic fibers from the lateral horn. In this way, the thoracic and the lumbar nerve, it consists of sensory fibers, motor fibers, and sympathetic fibers. In the sacral region of the S2, S3, and S4, what happens if you do a cross section? Again, it will be having the ventral segment, the dorsal segment. The dorsal segment, the cell is present over here in the dorsal horn, sensory in nature, sensory in function, and those in the anterior horn, they are motor, while in the lateral horn, over here there are cells which are parasympathetic in function. Now what happens that the fibers come from this dorsal horn, these are sensory, and the fibers come from this anterior horn, these are motor, while the fibers come from the lateral horn through the anterior root, and that's why when the nerve is being formed in the sacral segment, it consists of these sensory fibers, the motor fibers, and the parasympathetic preganglionic fibers. Now these parasympathetic preganglionic fibers, when come out of the sacral anterior foramen, sacrum is like this, it is having anterior ventral foramina. When the nerve come out of it, the ventral sacral foramina, it consists of three types of fibers: sensory, motor, and the sympathetic. The parasympathetic. Sensory, motor, and preganglionic parasympathetic. This preganglionic parasympathetic is then what happens? These preganglionic fibers, parasympathetic from the S2, S3, and S4, it leaves the nerve and enters into the pelvis, and in the pelvis these three nerves, it forms the inferior hypogastric plexus along with the sympathetic nerve which descend from above, and from this inferior hypogastric plexus the parasympathetic supply is being given to the pelvic organs, for example the uterus, the urinary bladder, the rectum, etc. And then the fiber from this inferior hypogastric plexus is being given to the descending colon till the splenic flexure on the left side. Those whole of descending colon, the polyclinic fibers are being given from S2, S3 and a fourth segment through the pelvic splanchnic nerves which separate from the sacral nerves, and then they join the inferior hypogastric plexus, and from inferior hypogastric plexus the branches post-glandular fibers are being given to the descending colon and the rest of this larger spine, and then to the contents of the pelvis, where they relay in the ganglion present in the wall of the concerned viscera, and the post-glandular fiber supplies this viscera. Okay, while the parasympathetic supply to the proximal part of the large intestine, and then to the small intestine, and then to the stomach, and then to the heart, and then to the lungs, it is being given by the vagus nerve. Look, in the medulla oblongata, look, this is the pons, it is the medulla oblongata. In the medulla oblongata, one nerve, vagus nerve, what comes out, one of the nucleus of the vagus nerve being present in the medulla oblongata, which is being called as dorsal vagal nucleus. This dorsal vagal nucleus present in the medulla oblongata, this is parasympathetic in function. Then the vagus nerve get this parasympathetic fiber from this dorsal vagal nucleus of the medulla oblongata, and then the vagus nerve descend downward and reaches into the head and neck, and then enters into the thorax, where it joins the cardiac plexus and pulmonary plexus, and then it enters into the abdomen, where it supplies the stomach, the duodenum, jejunum, small intestine, and ascending colon. And in this way, the vagus nerve supplies the viscera or organs in the thorax, and half of the viscera or more than half in the abdomen, where the preganglionic fiber originate from the dorsal vagal nucleus of the brain in the medulla, and then the fibers go to the viscera and relay in the ganglion present in the concerned viscera, and then it supplies. And then the function of the parasympathetic, in the heart, it slows the heart rate, while in the intestine, the parasympathetic generally is motor and secretomotor, and then it is inhibitory for the sphincter, that is, it relaxes the sphincter while it contracts the viscera, and it also contains the afferent fibers as well. Okay, then the other nuclei which are being present in the brain, okay, one is in the midbrain. Look, this is the midbrain which you see over here. This is the midbrain, and then this is the pons, this is the medulla oblongata. In the midbrain, there is one nucleus of, this is the midbrain. Let me say, this is the cerebrum, this is the diencephalon, and then this is the midbrain. In the midbrain, one nucleus of the oculomotor nerve, which is motor nucleus of oculomotor nerve. There is one other nucleus of oculomotor nerve, which we call it as accessory oculomotor nerve nucleus, or also called as Edinger-Westphal nucleus. This Edinger-Westphal nucleus is parasympathetic in function. That's why the oculomotor nerve, when come out of the midbrain, it consists of oculomotor nerve. When it comes out of the midbrain, it consists of two types of fibers, motor and parasympathetic, from the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. Then in the pons, look, this is the pons. In the pons, there is one nucleus which is being called as superior salivatory nucleus. This superior salivatory nucleus, which is present in the pons, that is also parasympathetic in function, and the fibers of it comes out with the facial nerve or seventh nerve. And then in the upper medulla and lower pons, there is another nucleus which is called as inferior salivatory nucleus, and this is also parasympathetic in function. And the fibers of inferior salivatory nucleus, it comes out along with the glossopharyngeal or ninth nerve. In this way, in the brain there are four parasympathetic nuclei: Edinger-Westphal nucleus of the third, superior salivatory nucleus of the facial, inferior salivatory nucleus of the glossopharyngeal or ninth, and dorsal vagal nucleus of the vagus nerve. The distribution of the vagus nerve from the dorsal vagal nucleus till into the thorax, in the head and neck, and the abdomen we have discussed. While in the area of the head and neck, there are four ganglion, parasympathetic ganglion, which, like the other parasympathetic ganglion, are not situated in the wall of the viscera but are being situated outside the viscera. Out of that, the first one is the ciliary ganglion. Ciliary. Look, the ciliary ganglion, it is being situated. Look, you can see this is the orbit. This is the orbit of the eye over here. The ciliary ganglion is being situated inside the orbit. The ciliary ganglion is being situated inside the orbit. The detail of these four ganglion will be done in second year with the brain or with the head and neck. As a first year student, I don't make you confuse much with the detail of this ganglion, but I will give you a brief description of it. The ciliary ganglion lies inside this orbit, and the preganglionic fibers are coming from the Edinger-Westphal nucleus of the third nerve, and then it reaches to this ganglion, ciliary ganglion, and relay over here. This coming to this ciliary ganglion are also sympathetic fibers and some sensory fibers, but they just come over here, do not relay, but just pass through it. While the fibers coming in the third nerve, they relay in the ciliary ganglion, and from the ciliary ganglion, the postganglionic fibers come out inside the orbit, and it supplies the sphincter pupil, which is being constricted, and then the ciliary muscles used for accommodation. And I told you that the function of the parasympathetic is like to read a newspaper or like to read the book, where the pupils are constricted and the lens accommodated. This is the function of the parasympathetic over the ciliary muscles and over the sphincter pupillae muscle, And the fibers are coming from the midbrain, Edinger-Westphal nucleus through the oculomotor nerve and relay in the ciliary ganglion. Then the second ganglion is the pterygopalatine ganglion. Look over here. Look, you can see this is the nerva basalis of the skull, and you can see over here in this area, in the pterygopalatine fossa, or near the opening of the pterygoid canal, over here lies the pterygopalatine ganglion. And this pterygopalatine ganglion, it receives the fibers. This pterygopalatine ganglion, it receives the fibers from the superior salivatory nucleus of the pons through the facial nerve. And which then gives the branch as greater petrosal nerve, which then forms the nerve of the pterygoid canal. But you at this time leave the detail, but only you understand that the fibers to the pterygopalatine ganglion are coming from the superior salivatory nucleus through the facial nerve and through the greater petrosal nerve, and then they relay in this ganglion. And this postganglionic fibers from this pterygopalatine ganglion come out, and note the point, secretomotor to the lacrimal gland, secretomotor to the glands of the nose and palate, to those of palate and to the glands of the palate and glands of the nose. What we say, when there is stimulation of this superior salivatory nucleus, there is increased secretion of the lacrimal gland, increased secretion from the nasal cavity and from the palate glands. What we call it is rhinorrhea or zukam, or it is called that this is the ganglion of hay fever. This pterygopalatine ganglion is the ganglion of hay fever. And then the third ganglion, which is present, the submandibular ganglion, and the submandibular ganglion, it also receives the preganglionic fibers from the superior salivatory nucleus of the pons through the nervous intermediate part of the facial nerve, and then chorda tympani, and then ultimately the lingual nerve. Okay? The submandibular parasympathetic ganglion, it also receives the nucleus is the superior salivatory nucleus in the pons, come out through the facial nerve, and then chorda tympani, and then the lingual nerve, or you can say simply as a first year student, from the superior salivatory to the facial nerve and its branches, it reaches to the submandibular ganglion and relay over there, and the postganglionic fibers then supplies the salivary glands of the oral cavity, that is submandibular salivary gland and sublingual salivary gland, and increase salivation. For the salivary gland, the parasympathetic is secretomotor. That's why during parasympathetic condition, the mouth remains moist, while during the sympathetic condition, the mouth remains dry. Okay, and then the fourth ganglion is the otic ganglion, and the otic ganglion receives the fibers from the inferior salivatory nucleus in the medulla and pons, the lower pons and upper medulla. From this inferior salivatory nucleus, the fibers reach to the otic ganglion through the glossopharyngeal nerve, tympanic plexus, Jacob's nerve, so on. But I don't again give this detail. From the inferior salivatory nucleus of the medulla Through the glossopharyngeal nerve, the fibers reach to the arctic ganglion, relay over here, and then the postganglionic fibers are being supplied to the parotid gland, again, which is a salivary gland. In this way, in the area of head and neck, there are 4 ganglion present in the orbit, base of the skull, near the foramen of whale, near the pterygoid canal. And over here, one ganglion is present on the gyoglossus muscle. These are present separate, small nodular ganglion, which does not lie in the wall of the viscera, but remains outside and receives the parasympathetic supply from the cranial nerves 3, and then the facial, and then the glossopharyngeal, and the postganglionic fibers are being given to the sphincter pupillae and ciliary muscles, and then to the lacrimal gland, and to the glands of the nose and the palate, and then to the salivary gland, submandibular salivary gland, sublingual salivary gland, and the parotid gland. This is a unique type of the presentation of the parasympathetic. Okay, this is the efferent or motor part of parasympathetic. Then the parasympathetic is also having the efferent part, and these parasympathetic fibers reach from the pelvic viscera and from the abdominal viscera through the same pelvic splanchnic nerves and reach to the sacral segment, and in the sacral segment, then one is for the automatic reflex, for example, for the urinary bladder, and the other is for the pain, and the pain pathway is then being along like that of the sympathetic. Okay, so it is also having the efferent fibers, and the more detail then we can give you while discussing, especially in the second year. This is sufficient for today. Thank you very much.